Okay, so get this. What if, like, the future is already here, right? Like hidden right under our noses in the labs and homes of Silicon Valley billionaires.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking designer babies, people. A world that, well, it seems only these elites even know exists. Kind of crazy, right? But
yeah,
that's what we're diving into today.
Yeah, we're going deep on this one, uncovering the secret world of designer babies. We're talking about 3 massive areas that are like completely changing what it means to be human.
Exactly. We're looking at, first off, the breakneck speed of gene editing technologies. Then we're going to delve into Silicon Valley's quiet revolution in human reproduction.
And finally, how all of this ties into none other than Elon Musk's vision for humanity's future.
It's wild, right? I bet you're already at least a little curious about all this cutting-edge stuff.
Of course. And for this deep dive, we've gone through a ton of sources, news articles, scientific discussions, even this, well, kind of wild analysis we found on YouTube, all to try and paint a clear picture of what's really happening and, maybe more importantly, what it all means for us for the future.
So yeah, today we're going to cut through all the noise and pull out the most important stuff from all this crazy, fast-moving research trying to, make sense of it all together.
Let's kick things off with, just how incredibly fast gene editing technologies are moving. You've probably heard of CRISPR, right?
Yeah, CRISPR.
But you know what's really fascinating? The basic science behind it, it was actually discovered way back in 1993.
Wow, 93. That's like before I was even...
Yeah, a while ago. And, despite its huge potential, I mean, we're talking about possibly delaying aging, maybe even curing cancer, it's still largely unknown to most people.
That's kind of mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the sources we looked at even compared it to AI, there was this quote from Elon Musk. He said, AI is far more dangerous than nukes. And then you see CRISPR being talked about in the same breath, like with the same level of, potential and risk. It makes you wonder, what are we really dealing with here?
Right. It's huge. Think of it like this. The old ways of messing with genes, it was like using, a hammer and chisel. CRISPR, though, it's like having these super precise, like, molecular scalpels.
I get it. But wasn't there, like, that tomato, the one that didn't go bad as fast?
Right. That was the Flavisavior tomato back in 94. Scientists stuck an extra gene in there, but it was, well, kind of a messy process. It worked, made the tomatoes last longer, but compared to what CRISPR can do, it was, well, basic.
Okay, yeah. So with CRISPR, we have what some folks are calling, no joke, Pandora's box. And it's not hard to see why. The ethical questions here are enormous. I mean, are we talking about like picking and choosing how our kids look before they're even born, designer babies, like for real? And then what does that do to society? People who are genetically enhanced versus those who aren't.
It gets pretty deep, pretty fast. And you have to remember, CRISPR is still a baby itself, technologically speaking. Even with all its precision, mistakes happen. And that's scary, especially when we're talking about editing genes in, sperm, eggs, embryos, what's called germinal gene editing. Those changes, they get passed down generation after generation.
We're messing with the very blueprint of life here.
Right. And it's already happening. We're seeing human DNA being altered. And if we don't have like really strong, transparent rules in place, things could get, well, kind of out of control.
Absolutely. This isn't science fiction, right? This is now.
Yeah.
And one of our sources was saying that while progress with CRISPR is happening, it's slow, and people investing in it, they need to be patient, especially because there could be bans on research, at least temporarily. But they seem pretty sure about one thing. CRISPR will affect like almost everything in the future.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we can't just like charge ahead without thinking things through. We need to, really consider the long-term consequences for everyone, for humanity.
And speaking of consequences, there's this one event that really brought the whole ethical mess of gene editing into the spotlight. This is like a case study you got to know about.
Yeah, the He Jiankui affair. Really fascinating and kind of disturbing how it all went down. This scientist, He Jiankui, working in China, he starts this secret project. He's working with fathers who are HIV positive and mothers who are HIV negative.
So he's trying to like edit out the possibility of their kids getting HIV.
That's the idea. He wants to use CRISPR-Cas9 to edit this gene called CCR5 in the embryos, the goal being to make them resistant to HIV infection.
Bold move.
And this wasn't just theory. October 2018, boom. The birth of twin girls, Lulu and Nana, announced via, get this, a YouTube video.
No way. A YouTube reveal.
Yeah, and it gets even wilder. Turns out there was a third baby, Amy, born in 2019, all part of this like underground experiment. Now, He Jiankui's university, SUSTech, They freaked out, claimed they had no clue what he was up to, said he was on unpaid leave, his own department didn't even know.
So this guy went totally rogue.
Looks like it. Now, the science is interesting here. He wasn't going for the natural CCR532 mutation, the one that really helps with HIV resistance. Instead, he messed with the gene in a different way, causing what's called a frameshift mutation. The twins ended up with mosaicism, meaning some of their cells had the edit, some didn't.
So like a patchwork of genes? Did it even work?
That's the thing. Nobody really knew if they'd actually be protected from all types of HIV.
Wow. But didn't he do like some kind of check beforehand, like a scan or something?
Yeah, he used something called pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. It's a way to check for like mixed up cell lines, what they call chimerism, and for any accidental edits in other genes.
So he wasn't completely reckless.
Maybe, but the whole project was shrouded in secrecy. No ethical review boards, no transparency, nothing. When he finally presented his work at this conference in Hong Kong, he tried to justify it by saying, look, families with inherited diseases, they need this.
Playing the sympathy card. Did it work?
Not really. The international scientific community basically lost it. They held this big meeting, the Second International Summit on Human Genome Editing, and came out swinging. They said what he did was irresponsible, no real medical need, bad experimental design, no ethical standards, and of course, zero transparency.
Ouch. What happened to him?
Well, China shut down his research, his university fired him, and to top it off, he got 3 years in prison for practicing medicine illegally. It's a lot. But those gene-edited kids, as of December 2021, they were reported to be healthy.
It's kind of a mess, right? This technology, it's powerful, but man, the ethical questions, they're huge. And we're just starting to grapple with them.
Exactly. And this He Jiankui thing, it threw gasoline on a fire that was already burning. People were already debating the whole idea of editing genes that could be passed down even before this whole experiment.
Yeah, like what happens generations down the line? That's a big one.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole question of, are we just going to start using this for like non-medical stuff, like making people smarter, stronger, whatever?
Right, enhancement. Not just treating disease, but like upgrading humans.
Okay, so where did the official folks stand on this, like the big science organizations?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag. You've got the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine in the U.S. They said, okay, maybe germline editing, but only for serious diseases and only if there's no other option.
Reasonable.
What about others?
That's Declaration of Helsinki. That's like the global rule book for medical research. They were tougher. They said, no way. No early embryo gene editing for making babies. That's unethical. And then you have groups like the American Society of Human Genetics. They're cool with the basic research, but said, hold up, no editing embryos that are going to be implanted and become babies. Not yet, anyway. Okay, so a lot of caution. But were there any groups, like, leading the other way?
Interestingly, yeah. The Nuffield Council on Bioethics in the UK, they argued that maybe germline editing could be okay ethically, but only with super strict safety measures. But here's the thing. In China, at the time, the law was clear. No manipulating human embryos for making babies. And that ethical approval, He Jiankui claimed he got from a hospital. Turns out it was fake.
Wow. Just forging documents.
Apparently. And you know what else? Jiankui himself, he didn't even have any real training in bioethics. He tried to publish a paper like outlining his ethical reasoning, but the journal, the CRISPR journal, retracted it, said he had conflicts of interest he didn't disclose, and probably broke a bunch of rules and norms.
This whole thing just screams like red flags everywhere.
Yeah, and it raised all these huge ethical issues, autonomy, justice, doing good versus doing harm, the whole deal. But there's this other little wrinkle, and this one's kind of freaky.
Okay, hit me with it.
Turns out the changes He Jiankui made to Lulu and Nana's CCR5 gene, they might have accidentally made their brains better, like smarter.
He made them smarter by accident.
Maybe. Studies have shown a link between that gene and like memory function in mice and stroke recovery in humans. Jiankui knew about this research, but said he wasn't into the whole enhancement thing. There was also this report claiming that people with a certain CCR5 variant had a higher risk of dying early, but that turned out to be wrong based on bad data.
So it's like we're messing with forces we barely understand.
Yeah, the power of this tech, it's mind-blowing. And the ethical stuff, it's like a tangled web. We're going to need a lot more time to figure this all out.
All right, moving on. Let's talk about like Silicon Valley and this whole quiet revolution they've got going on with how we make babies.
Yeah.
It's changing super fast, and I don't think most people even realize it.
Yeah, big changes under the radar. Take Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI.
OpenAI, the AI guys.
Yep, that's them. Well, he and his partner, they just announced they had a kid. The thing is, they're both dudes. So, advanced reproductive tech is definitely involved here. Yeah, and while it's not confirmed, you got to wonder, did they use gene editing to have a kid who's genetically related to both of them?
I mean, wouldn't that be like a first?
It's definitely cutting edge, and it shows that things are moving fast in this field.
No kidding.
And what's really cool is that this isn't just some isolated event. There are scientists out there, like Lynn Hake. He's a leader in, get this, biparental reproduction, and Nature magazine even named him one of the top scientists in 2023.
Biparental meaning like two dads.
Exactly. And this recognition from Nature shows that, the scientific community is taking this stuff seriously. It's legit science.
Okay, so what about Altman and his partner? Were they just lucky early adopters or what?
Not exactly. They actually invested in this company called Conception, a Silicon Valley fertility tech startup, early on.
So they were in on this whole thing from the start.
Seems like it.
Hey.
And the timeline is super interesting. Altman came out when he was just 16, back in 2001. He meets his partner in 2019, and by 2020, they're investing in Conception, all while keeping their family plans pretty hush-hush. Then, bam, July 2023, Conception announces they've cracked the code on male-male reproduction, claiming high embryo survival rates. The science world was, skeptical, but then Altman drops the news. He's gonna be a dad. He and his partner get married in 2024, and boom, baby arrives in February 2025.
So less than 2 years from announcement to baby? That's fast.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, were they further along than they let on? While everyone's focused on the same-sex couple has a baby narrative, the reality is probably way more complicated. I mean, we're talking serious biological breakthroughs, maybe even genetic engineering happening behind the scenes.
Okay, I'm starting to see how deep this rabbit hole goes.
And it doesn't stop there. There are rumors swirling around Silicon Valley, whispers about being able to, actually customize your baby, pick their height, eye color, hair color, the whole shebang.
Okay, hold up. Are we talking build a baby?
It's all rumor for now, but it shows you where people's minds are at. It's gene editing is getting so good, so precise, that it's opening up all these crazy possibilities, at least for those who can afford it.
Yeah, that's the scary part. But back to Conception. They're working on this tech called IVG, right? In vitro gametogenesis. Break that down for me.
Okay, so IVG, it's all about making human eggs and sperm, but in a lab using any cell from the body. They're starting with what are called induced pluripotent stem cells, or iPSCs.
What are those?
They're these master cells that can be turned into any other type of cell in the body.
Whoa, so you could take a skin cell and turn it into a sperm cell.
That's the goal.
Wild. And why is this such a big deal?
Think about it. First off, it could help people who can't have kids naturally, for whatever reason, medical stuff, age, whatever. And for same-sex couples, it means they could have kids that are biologically related to both of them. Imagine eggs from two men fertilized with donor sperm, or sperm from two women used to fertilize a donor egg. Or even, get this, each partner's cells used to create both eggs and sperm for surrogacy.
Mind blown.
Right. And Conception, they claim they've already made major progress. They say they've created follicles in the lab. Those are the things in ovaries that help eggs mature. They've got tons of funding, a big team, the whole 9 yards. They say they'll prove within a year that these lab-grown follicles can become fertilizable eggs.
That's a big claim.
Yeah, and there's a catch. They haven't released many details, and they haven't published any of this in, peer-reviewed scientific journals.
So other scientists can't, check their work.
Exactly, and that's why some scientists are hold up, we need to see the data. They're skeptical.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, but are they the only ones working on this?
Nope, there are others. Like this startup, Ivy et al. They're using CRISPR, trying to develop IVG faster and safer. And then there's this bioethicist at Stanford, Hank Greeley. He gets the potential of IVG, how it could help millions of couples, but he's also worried about, that Silicon Valley move fast and break things mentality. He thinks the FDA needs to step in and regulate all this stuff.
Yeah, it's moving way faster than the rules, right?
Totally. Even the CEO of Conception, Matt Krisaloff, he admits there are these gray areas that society needs to figure out, and fast. This isn't just tech, it's ethics. It's the future of humanity.
Heavy stuff. Okay, let's talk about Elon Musk. He's a whole other level of this conversation. Now, Musk has been super vocal about his whole pronatalist thing. He thinks low birth rates are a bigger threat than global warming.
It's an interesting take, and you can't ignore the fact that he's got like a huge family himself, 11 kids, if you can believe it. One of our sources actually profiled him alongside these prominent pronatalists, Malcolm and Simone Collins.
Okay, so who are these Collins folks?
They're like the poster couple for pronatalism. What's fascinating is that they're atheists. They base their beliefs on science and data. They're part of this effective altruism movement. And their goal is to maximize the number of future generations that inherit their genes, their worldview, the whole package.
Okay, I'm following.
And Musk is on board with their whole mission. He even supports them financially, along with other big names like Jane Talon, the guy who co-founded Skype. The core of pronatalism is this fear that birth rates are plummeting, especially in developed countries. Tons of nations are way below that 2.1 births per woman replacement rate.
So not enough babies to replace the older generation.
Exactly. And their argument is that right now, the only countries with sustainable birth rates are the poorer ones, those with average incomes below $5,000. They say richer countries are becoming way too reliant on immigration to keep their populations stable.
Interesting. And how do the Collinses fit into this?
They see having more kids as a way to promote diversity and cultural evolution. Their whole approach to raising their big family is super structured, based on data and low-effort parenting. They even have their own made-up religion, Future Day, instead of Christmas. The whole focus is on making the world a better place for future generations.
That's kind of intense.
Yeah, they're all in on this. But here's where it gets really relevant to our conversation. Simone Collins, she can only have kids through IVF because of some health issues she's had. And they're not just doing IVF, they're screening their embryos.
Screening for what?
Potential intelligence and health issues. They're using companies like Genomic Prediction, that's the one Sam Altman invested in, to assess health risks. And they've even got another team that claims to give them scores for things like happiness and future income potential.
Okay, whoa. So they're basically picking and choosing the best possible embryos.
Yeah, they're selecting against embryos with high risks of cancer, certain mental health conditions, stuff like that. But they're not against autism. They see that as part of who a person is. They're even planning to donate any embryos they don't use. They make a distinction between their approach, which they call polygenics, parents getting to choose traits they value, and eugenics, which is state-controlled forced breeding programs. They've even said that a lot of people they talk to, they just want kids who are happy and expressive or funny and kind. Not everyone is obsessed with intelligence.
Interesting.
Yeah, and their goal is to make this embryo screening tech-free for everyone.
Ambitious. What about this Malcolm Collins guy? What's his deal?
Well, he's pretty blunt. He calls babies trying and aggravating until they reach a certain age. They've got this, kind of controversial parenting style. There's this story where he actually slapped his 2-year-old in a restaurant. The journalist who was with them was speechless. He explained it by saying he was using tiger parenting techniques, observing how tigers raise their cubs.
Okay, that's a little out there.
Yeah, it's definitely a different approach.
All right, so bring it back to Musk. How does his worldview connect to all this gene editing stuff?
Well, our YouTube source dove deep into this. They said there are rumors that Musk might have even edited his own kids' genes.
No way. Actually edited them.
That's the rumor, to make them smarter, get rid of diseases, all that. It kind of fits with his whole population collapse worry, right? And he's got a history of, unorthodox parenting. He started this school for his kids who were unschooled, and it also admits gifted kids, those with IQs over 130.
So a school for geniuses, basically.
Yeah, something like that. The YouTube source also had some unconfirmed stories like Musk offering to contribute a gamete to women who want kids but not husbands, and a woman named Siobhan Zillis claiming she had a 5-month-old gene-edited child with Musk. But again, none of that is confirmed. There's even a story, unconfirmed, about one of his surrogate mothers staying in a super high-security villa during her pregnancy, a biosafety level 3 facility.
What would that even be for?
Well, maybe it has something to do with gene editing. Who knows? But the YouTube video also pulled up some of Musk's past statements, stuff from back in 2016 and 2022, where he says he thinks DNA editing will be crucial to fixing big problems like climate change, inequality, overpopulation. He even said that messing with RNA and DNA could totally change organisms.
So he's not just, thinking about it, he sees it as a solution.
Seems that way.
Okay, so what kind of future is Musk, envisioning here? Or this YouTube source, I mean?
Well, they laid out a few possibilities. One is that we end up with this permanent class divide based on like genetic enhancements, the haves and the have-nots, but on a genetic level. Another is like a Brave New World scenario where everyone's genetically engineered for specific roles in society. Kind of creepy.
Yeah, not a fan of that one.
Me neither. But then they also talk about this like catastrophic scenario. What if the tech isn't perfect yet and we end up with widespread genetic diseases, like a total collapse of civilization? They even compared it to like the Spanish flu, but on a genetic level. There's a science fiction story they mentioned that dealt with that.
Okay, now I'm getting chills.
Right. It's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And they end by asking this big philosophical question. Are we moving from Homo sapiens to Homo genes? Like, are we making ourselves obsolete? Maybe the future is AI, driven by the need to, like, overcome the limitations of our human bodies and brains, for things like space travel.
Wow. Okay, so let's bring it back to where we started. Is the future already here? Are designer babies a thing for the elite?
Based on what we've seen, yeah, it's a real possibility.
The speed of these gene editing technologies like CRISPR, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And then you've got these Silicon Valley startups like Conception that are totally revolutionizing how we have babies. And Musk, with his whole pronatalist vision, it's all connected.
Absolutely. And it raises all sorts of ethical and societal questions. What happens to equality, to our sense of humanity? If we can literally design our children, what does that say about us?
Yeah, if we can change our genetic code, create life in new ways, what does it even mean to be human anymore? It's a future we might be stumbling into, whether we're ready for it or not.
It's a lot to think about.
Deep dive indeed. If you found this, thought-provoking, make sure to follow and share it. Let's keep this conversation going.